So, how do emotional triangles form? Well, basically, they form because of some kind of instability of a two-person relationship. When you have two people who lack differentiation, when you have two people where there is no clear leadership, or if you have two people who are in a context of high anxiety, it won't be long until a third person or issue becomes their focus. So A and B triangulate C, the third party C, into their relationship. And they do so, or one of them does so by a shared hatred or support for, or out of their relationship through secrets and exclusion. And what happens is when A or B, because of the anxiety, the tension in their relationship, one of them triangulates in C, what happens is it stabilizes the relationship between A and B. So if you can imagine A here and B here, and there's some kind of tension, when one of them triangulates in C, then this tension, this anxiety gets covered over. It becomes kind of static, if you will. And then the third person becomes the focus, and then it stabilizes. So when a you have tension between a mother and a father, and some kind of anxiety is there, and they're not dealing with it, it grows. Often what happens is one of them will triangulate in, often the oldest or the youngest child, the one who's most responsible or the one who's most vulnerable, and kind of dump their junk on their child. And what happens is this stabilizes the relationship between the mother and father, but now the child is now the kind of the recipient, the bucket where the anxiety of these two is being dumped into. Almost 99% of the time, when behavioral issues surface in a child, it is the direct result of being triangulated in by mom or dad or something like that, almost all of the time. And so treating the symptoms doesn't alleviate the problems in the system. Does that make sense? If you take the child out and treat the child's symptoms, they might be okay for a while, but if they go back into the system where these two issues have not been addressed, where the anxiety between the parents have not been addressed, that child's position will reignite, if you will, that triangle. In the context, take for another example, in the context of adultery, the triangle that is formed in adultery is not primarily about the sex. It is about the secrecy. Within a family, the most common emotional triangles involve two parents and a child, as I said. A single child is almost invariably in a triangle. So if you are watching this video and you are a single child, you will most likely be able to reflect pretty quickly on how you were triangulated into your parents' relationship. And so, an emotionally triangled child often tend to either high achievement or great dysfunction. Both of these are symptoms of being triangulated in this relationship. And trying to help a child to overcome their dysfunction without addressing the triangle itself is generally useless. The only way that such a situation can usually be addressed is by one parent taking the lead. That is, one parent who is motivated to change. Now, understanding the logic of emotional triangles, understanding this logic, helps us also understand why you have so many kids from one family turn out so differently, right? You ever seen that before? Emotional triangles can help us understand why four different children in one family are all over the place in how they function. Most often is a direct result of how they've been triangulated in their family. Now, emotional triangles also exist in society, and I'm going to give one example that is both rooted in our past and I think is impacting our present. And so I ask for a little bit of leeway in this example. Friedman actually touches on this, but he writes before what we are experiencing in our current situation today. Um, Friedman imagines how triangles function in terms of race relations in the United States. He says, quote, "From the beginning, the black population of America has served as a displacement focus for the problems of whites with one another, particularly the normal differences between classes," end quote. Now, what he means here is that there are issues among the white population, and often much of that, when that goes unresolved, um, what he's saying is blacks get triangulated in. That is, he suggests that this displacement focus is one reason why America has never experienced the intensity of class struggles that we find in other nations. Now, he's not saying that there aren't classes here, but consider this. Consider what has happened in our country with the election of Donald Trump as president and what Donald Trump has kind of surfaced. You don't. You may disagree with me. That's fine. Just think about what's happened in our culture, in our society at this moment. If Friedman is right, and the black population became served as a displacement focus, that is, they basically focused in or dumped their junk, if you will, on black Americans, then it might also suggest that as race issues are addressed, a greater class struggle will emerge. And I wonder if that isn't what we're seeing today. More and more, we are addressing uh, um, the the realities of race issues, of racism, of white supremacy, of and there are many pockets of our culture that don't want to deal with that, or don't admit it, or don't think there are problems. I'm not in that camp. Um, I do think we're in a moment, though, where race issues have been bubbling right below the surface, and we're in a political moment, a cultural moment, where they've erupted into the mainstream, and people are much more feel much more open about expressing those views. Um, Emotional triangles, in a sense, on a larger scale, help us understand that. They help to form alliances, and they are often shrewdly employed, according to Friedman, by those who would consider themselves in the weaker positions. So, some things to think about. Think about the triangles that you're involved in, that and how they formed, right? But also look outward. Think about the triangles in the companies that you work for, the churches that you worship at, um, or in your county governments or your city governments, state, and of course our nation. Think about how triangles form between distinct groups of people um, from different contexts, and how that impacts uh, how we all operate, how we all relate together. Okay, so some difficult material here. You don't have to agree with me. I just want you to think about that, and you'll have opportunity to respond more as we move along. Thank you.